Tonight, 5 people dead, 3,000 buildings destroyed, 180,000 people ordered to evacuate after one of the most devastating firestorms ever in California. Officials say they hope the tide is turning, but the wildfires have already erased entire neighborhoods.
As you can see, there's nothing left, and I've been here for about an hour and a half, and I don't want to leave.
The flames seen from space and the warning of extreme fire behavior when winds strengthen again.
Everyone who went to school there, they lost their homes. They lost 2 homes because they were living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president right now?
We're getting the resources to help rebuild.
The governor confronted by an angry resident as the largest blaze still rages out of control. And even as Californians count the cost, the looting has already begun. Tonight, I hear from one man who escaped the flames with minutes to spare. Plus, I'll speak live to a Los Angeles councilwoman after criticism over budget cuts. Also coming up, 5 presidents all in one room for the final farewell to Jimmy Carter. And redefining the impossible, after 40 days and 566 miles, I speak to the first person with a disability to ski solo to the South Pole. That's all coming up on The World with me, Yalda Hakim. Good evening. If you listen to how people from scorched communities in Los Angeles have been talking about the scale of the destruction there, it may feel like an exaggeration, but the images speak for themselves. Residents have described the inferno and the aftermath as a nightmare, almost biblical, like Armageddon, like a bomb had been dropped. Once affluent communities, buildings that have stood for decades now reduced to ashes. The strong winds that fan the flames and quicken their spread will soon pick up again. Before they do, firefighters hope to bring them under control. These fires are the most destructive ever to hit Los Angeles. They have displaced tens of thousands and traumatized countless more. And now the blame game has begun. Should the mayor of the city have returned home earlier? Are budget cuts to blame? Why were water hydrants empty? We'll show you a confrontation between one angry resident and the governor of California in a moment. But let's get started with tonight's first report from our US correspondent, David Blevins.
This is the front line in the battle to contain the fire that's still raging around Altadena. Our return to the evacuation zone, a drive through a ghost town of ashes. One man had risked that journey earlier.
Everything's gone.
But was too late to save his property. There's nothing left of the place Tom was called home for the last 37 years.
Is it possible to put into words how it feels to leave your home and come back and find it in this condition?
I just got off the phone with somebody, and as you can see, there's nothing left, and I've been here for about an hour and a half, and I don't want to leave. It's home. So I really can't put it into words.
Anna's grateful her family survived this, deeply conscious that some neighbours didn't.
I think it's really sad. I'm devastated for them. I'm devastated for us, but like I said, we each walked out with 2 pairs of clothing changes, and that's all that we have.
They've lost everything to the flames, apart from a few treasured possessions.
If you can see what survived back there is my dad's sacred virgin. See it way back there? She's standing?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
This area is closed.
Monte Rosa Drive remains sealed off. This was home to one of the victims, 66-year-old Victor Shaw.
The residents had just moments to gather a few belongings and escape the inferno engulfing their property. Victor's sister says she pleaded with him to go, but he refused, a decision that had tragic consequences.
Amid the debris, they're struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what has happened here.
You know, the things that's not replaceable is like the pictures. You know, you can't capture those moments again, but nothing's more important than having all of my family members alive.
Everything that we know and love is gone. not just this house, my whole city gone, man. The whole thing, like everything, my whole neighborhood, everything that I grew up to love and know is burnt up.
This community had hopes for the future, but there's only despair now and questions, lots of them. They're uniting to offer shelter and can't even begin to think about how they'll rebuild their lives. David Blevins, Sky News in Los Angeles.
And we'll be speaking to David in just a moment, but I just want to show you how much devastation these fires have caused. 7 of them are still burning. Some of them are under control. The largest in the Palisades is completely uncontained. This is the central business area in the Palisades, and just have a look at it now. The sky is tinged with orange. The building is blackened. Let me just show you another image. Chase Bank in Altadena. You can see it there now. And now destroyed and still alight. And this is the church in the same neighbourhood, engulfed in flames, its roof caved in. Well, joining me now is David Latt, a resident of Pacific Palisades, where the biggest of the LA fires has been burning. Thank you so much for joining us, David, on the programme. I mean, this is something that is really quite tragic and shocking to see and has devastated the community.
Absolutely. And it's if you live in Southern California, if you live in the community where I do, Pacific Palisades, we're up against the foothills of a nature conservancy. We know the drill about what to do with earthquakes. We know what to do when there's a fire safety risk issue. We know to take care of our property, to keep debris away from the buildings. We know to have a grab and go box. We know to pay attention, unlike, unfortunately, the individual who didn't leave his house. We know to leave our houses if we're advised by first responders. We know all these things. And yet what happened on Tuesday is shocking. The vastness of the devastation, an entire community, you're seeing those images. It looks to me like, I mean, I'm not old enough to have seen it, but Dresden during World War II, or London during the Blitz, where just neighborhoods become shadows, as if a photograph was taken and people disappeared and all you saw was where they used to be. And it's shocking for all of us that we lost so much, not in our individual homes. Again, the other people that you were hearing across LA, on the other side of LA rather, that what mattered to us was gone literally in the blink of an eye. Within hours, our neighborhood was gone. I just saw a video that was taken of our block, and there's nothing. There's just nothing. A chimney, be a tree, a hedge, but yeah, just kind of speechless.
Yeah, I can absolutely, it's difficult to imagine. And even from afar, we're watching this and it doesn't feel like an exaggeration, describing the scenes as apocalyptic and like a war zone, just the way that you have described. You've talked about what happened on Tuesday and how quickly things moved. Just talk us through the moments when you realized, as you say, you've lived there, you know what you need to do, but just that moment when you realize you've got to get out now.
So I'm trying to think. I think it was about 10:15 in the morning, maybe 10:30 in the morning on Tuesday. And I was working in my office and the window faces the backyard and the hills of the conservancy. I got a phone call. And it was from our neighbor on the other side of our house. And he said, "You have to get out. You have to evacuate." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "There's a fire and it's coming our way." And I went outside and I saw smoke and I could see that it was relatively close. And again, we've been in situations where we had to evacuate, and sometimes you're gone for a couple of hours, sometimes part of a day, but we've never stayed away more than that. So again, kind of used to this. I lived there for over 40 years, so I get it. And I went on the roof because I saw that there were leaves and debris, and I know the instruction is get that kind of combustible material off your roof, because if embers land, then you become a problem. So I went up on the roof and I saw fire was just, I'd say, 4 blocks away, very close, and not in the Conservancy, but I could tell it was in the backyard of a house. And there was black smoke coming up. I know that's not a good sign, but I didn't see flames. So I went down and told my wife, and then I went back up. So now it's about 10:45. And in that very short space, the quantity of black smoke multiplied tenfold very quickly. The wind is blowing, and the wind was clearly coming in our direction. And now I could see flames. So there was no question we had to get out of there. And at that point, our text system started sending out alerts, mandatory evacuation, not voluntary, but mandatory. And what that means in the language of Southern California is get out quick. The other problem, which your reporting has maybe already discussed, is Pacific Palisades is a little unique in the Los Angeles basin in that there's only one road in and out. It's called Sunset Boulevard. And feeding that one road are 3 other roads. So even in good times, there can be a bottleneck, big traffic jams trying to get in and out of the Palisades. Well, now multiply that 100-fold as 20,000 people are trying to get out. And the police did a very good job. LAPD was directing traffic. It was moving things along. But where we left our house within 30 minutes of seeing the fire, it took 2 hours to actually get out of the area. So during that time, we realized we were at risk, that if the fire had come down and all these cars are bumper to bumper, we could be in a really bad state. And there's another part of the Palisades where another single road. And we learned later from friends who live in that part of the Palisades called the Highlands, there was fire on both sides of the highway, and police cars were leading 5 cars at a time down the hill because it was that dangerous. We didn't have that, so we were able to leave the Palisades and the beach area, and we're now staying in the mid-city area called Larchmont. So we got out in time, and we had help from the authorities, and it worked well. But then we learned very quickly that the entire community was gone. Just hard to.
It really is. It's utterly devastating. But we're grateful that you're safe, and thank you so much for joining us here on the program, David.
Happy to do that. Thank you for covering the story.
Thank you. Well, tonight, the LA County Sheriff said close to 200,000 people were now under evacuation orders. It gives you a sense of the scale of this disaster, with multiple fires threatening homes and livelihoods. Our data and forensics correspondent Tom Cheshire has been looking at the size and impact of the fires.
The intensity of these fires on the ground is terrifying to see, and even more so when you realise just how huge the area consumed by these flames is. Now, this is the situation in Los Angeles as its residents woke up on Thursday morning. Thousands of acres ablaze. Now, some of these, like Woodley, are under control, but that is only 30 acres, whereas the Palisades fire, the big one, is still classified as an active firefight, and that covers more than 17,000 acres. And the devastation is on an epic scale. Now, this is Altadena, an area in North LA. This is what it looked like before. But the firestorm has come and it has gutted entire neighborhoods. Have a look at that. And this is a different view captured by satellite again, but now we're looking at infrared. What this is measuring is how hot and intense these fires have been burning. If we go to the Pacific Coast Highway over to the west, now again, this is what it looked like before the recent fires there on the beach, and this is what it looks like afterwards. Buildings burnt, the smoke still billowing. Or we can take the view from the street. We're going back to the Palisades. Again, this is what it looked like before the fires, the view from the street. And this is what it looks like after the fires have ripped through. It is utter devastation. Now, part of that is how quickly these fires have spread. What we have here is Sky News analysis of infrared imagery. So effectively, we're looking at heat again. You can see how these fires grew at the same time in 2 separate locations for those really big ones. Now, LA is, of course, home to the stars, but fire is sweeping through whole areas, no matter how exclusive the neighborhood. So in Malibu, the homes of Paris Hilton, Billy Crystal, and James Woods have been destroyed, along with hundreds of others. and other celebrities live close to the zones. Here in the hills, you've got George Lucas, Beyonce and Jay-Z, and Jennifer Aniston. Or in the area of another fire in Sunset, the home of Winona Ryder, Charlie XCX and Charlize Theron, under threat, as is the Hollywood sign itself, as are many, many more houses. Because there really is nowhere these fires do not touch. For comparison, this is a map of London. And this is what it looks like if we take the combined fire areas and superimpose those on top. You can see just how big it is. So in all, we've got 27,000 acres that have burned so far in LA, around 118 square kilometres, and the fires still continue to rage.
That was Tom Cheshire reporting there. Well, let's cross live now to our David Blevins, who joins us from Altadena tonight. And David, I mean, it's being described as the most destructive fires in LA history. And frankly, the pictures speak for themselves.
They do, and it would be virtually impossible to exaggerate the scale of the devastation here in Altadena. People are utterly distressed by the loss of loved ones, and for thousands of people, the loss of their property. And there is still very real danger here. Even within the last couple of hours, the Eaton fire has extended across these Wilson Mountains, and that's posing a threat to the telecommunications in this area. And that really would be a concern for local residents who rely on their local news networks, particularly for evacuation orders and advice to boil their water they've also had over the last 24 hours. And the scale of the devastation around us really is breathtaking. Home after home reduced to rubble, really. Debris, scorched remains, a few treasured possessions you can see among the ashes, but people really can't even begin to think about how they start over again from this disaster. It is almost impossible really to find the right words, but as you say, Yalda, you don't need the words when you're looking at this kind of picture.
Yeah, and as you say, I mean, the threat and the danger isn't over yet. You know, there have been moments of respite, but this whole thing could still escalate from here.
Yeah, there is still a risk because none of the fires are contained. We've got at least half a dozen fires raging across Southern California, covering an area of at least 35,000 acres. Firefighters are absolutely stretched to the limit. And we're hearing all sorts of reports over the last 24 hours about water shortages, about fire hydrant failures, about a $20 million cut to the fire department budget. And so long after, I think, the dust has settled on this disaster, those questions will remain. But right now, for the people we've been chatting to today, their first priority is to find shelter and to really just, I think, be grateful for the fact that their lives have been spared when some of their neighbours have lost their lives in such tragic circumstances in very streets like the one we're standing in.
Yet, David, as you say, there is a lot of anger from the community towards the decisions that the authorities have made. But are the authorities stepping in now and providing the sort of shelter and assistance that the local community needs?
I think they are providing the shelter. They're not providing the answers around those big questions regarding the water shortage, but I don't think they consider that a priority right now, answering those concerns. Instead, they're just addressing the immediate crisis that is in front of their eyes. And I don't know whether you can hear it or not, but the firefighting aircraft are constantly circling here. We saw fire truck after fire truck this morning. They really are doing everything in their power to bring this under control. But when you're dealing with a force of nature on this scale, elements that are way beyond your control, it's very difficult to contain a fire. And I think it's going to be a number of days before the emergency services, the first responders, are able to really breathe a sigh of relief and say they have this all under control.
David, thank you so much for all of your reporting. And as we were showing you on your screens, on our screens, these are live pictures, the aerial shots that David was talking about, just showing you the scale of the destruction. It's
Thank you.
difficult.
Thanks.
It's difficult to see the before and after images. Just gives you a sense of how vast this is. And As David was saying, the threat and danger is still not over yet. Well, as ever with natural disasters, it wasn't long before the political blame game began. Today, Sky News cameras were rolling as one angry resident confronted the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, just as he was trying to reach the president. Here's Martha Kellner's report.
Here. Evacuation order for Malibu, east of Las Flores.
As the emergency alerts continue unabated across Los Angeles, Rachel is returning to the Pacific Palisades.
Oh, 719 Island Street, gone. Oh.
It's been home her whole life, but she barely recognises it.
Apocalypse.
Around every corner, almost complete destruction.
This was a little cooking store thing. This is a parking lot for a center.
Firefighting planes bringing water from the ocean to tackle the blazes still raging in all parts of this city. Growing too is anger at a perceived lack of preparedness by authorities.
We shouldn't be seeing this. We shouldn't. This is where people need to wake up. Because if you're voting and you're picking people for softness or for the fuzzy feeling you got because they seem like they're good people, I want to know that we're going to have someone in charge.
Then Rachel spots a face she recognises.
Is that Gavin Newsom? That's the governor. That's the governor. Governor, I live here, governor. That was my daughter's school, Governor. Please tell me what you're going to do. I'm not going to hurt him, I promise.
I'm literally talking to the president right now to specifically answer the question of what we can do for you and your daughter.
Can I hear it? Can I hear your call? Because I don't believe it.
California Governor Gavin Newsom is being criticised by some for water mismanagement as hydrants ran dry while fires multiplied.
So I have to get cell service.
So let's get it. Let's get it. I want to be here when you call the president.
I appreciate it. I'm doing that right now. And it's to immediately get reimbursements, individual assistance, and to help you. I'm devastated for you. I'm so sorry, especially for your daughter. I have 4 kids. Losing the school.
Everyone who went to school there, they lost their homes. They lost 2 homes because they were living in one and building another. Governor, please tell me, what are you going to do with the president right now?
We're getting the resources to help rebuild.
Why was there no water in the hydrants, Governor?
That's all literally.
Is it going to be different next time?
It has to be. Has to be. Of course.
What are you going to do?
I'm doing
to
everything
fill the
I can.
hydrants. I would fill them up personally. You know that.
I literally have.
I would fill up the hydrants myself.
I would. I understand.
But would you do that?
I would do whatever I can.
But you're not. I see the. Do you know there's water dripping over there, Governor? There's water coming out there. You can use it.
Diminishing winds are bringing some respite for firefighters, but it's likely to be brief. As estimated losses surge, there is still zero containment of this fire. Officials say they don't know the death toll. Dogs will be brought in to search this rubble for fatalities. Jeffrey and his partner Nicole are returning to their seaside community, once a little slice of paradise.
Each one is an individual neighbor. So this was my dearest friend, Gayleen, who I've known for my whole life, 35 years. That was our clubhouse where we would play pool every Friday. That was Ben's house. These are like my closest friends here.
They sift through the dust. In a plastic box, everything they can find. A turtle figurine, a garden gnome, a house name plaque. It's very little, but in a place where the loss is so huge, it means so much.
Well, let's go straight to Martha, who joins us live now from Pacific Palisades. And Martha, I mean, extraordinary exchange there with the woman in your piece confronting the governor of California and not holding back, expressing her outrage at just how slow things are moving as far as she's concerned.
Yeah, I think the heartbreak and the rage from local people is understandable when you consider the scale of the loss here. It's hard to put into words in the Pacific Palisades. just what has gone on. I'd estimate between 50 and 75% of this place, which is home to 24,000 people, is now completely destroyed. And as David was saying earlier, the danger has not disappeared. There are still fires smouldering here. I'm still wearing a mask because the smoke is heavy in the air from these embers and from the fires that they're still trying to put out from above. That is some good news at the moment, is that those aerial firefighting missions have been able to resume, but it's really difficult to find much good news here. As you were saying, you know, that exchange that we saw between Rachel Dervish and Governor Gavin Newsom, really striking. I think lots of local people can't understand why there wasn't enough water in the water hydrants. That's what some firefighters have been saying, or at least that the water pressure wasn't strong enough as those fires raged. I think people can't understand either why the mayor of this city, Karen Bass, who was challenged so excellently on Sky News by my colleague David Blevins, they can't understand why she was in Ghana on a diplomatic mission, didn't return to Los Angeles until more than 1,000 homes had been burned and more than 100,000 people under evacuation orders. This tragedy, as you might imagine, is being politicised already. Donald Trump has criticised Gavin Newsom for failing to reduce the threat of the wildfire. He says that Newsom didn't adequately increase the water supply in Southern California and that he didn't remove dead trees and undergrowth from the brush. Gavin Newsom has struck back at Donald Trump. He says he shouldn't be trying to play politics at a time like this. Water experts disputing Donald Trump's claims as well, saying that there was simply unprecedented demand for water in this part of California. So, yeah, that political blame game ongoing as people return to their homes, and this is what they find. When they get here. You know, you can see just TV sets, charred remains of washing machines here. And we're also hearing the sad news that in addition to those 5 deaths confirmed in the east of the city in Altadena, human remains are believed to have been found down on the Pacific Coast Highway, the coastal road in Pacific Palisades, as well as the search through this rubble for more potential fatalities goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, the authorities continue to say that the threat remains. And, you know, just looking at your piece there and what's going on behind you, I mean, it just appears that, you know, nothing remains standing and it all just appears unrecognizable. And David was also saying that, you know, the authorities, frankly, at this point, don't want to answer any of those questions. They don't want to address the anger of the community at this stage. They just don't see that as a priority in this moment.
Yeah, I think they're continuing to say that the priority is saving lives, but there are very warranted questions to be asked about whether they were prepared enough for blazes of this size. It was in many ways an imperfect storm. You have months of lack of rainfall in Los Angeles. It's not rained here for months and months. It was in a state of drought. There was low humidity. And then these incredibly strong winds, the strongest winds in this part of California for more than a decade, that all contributed to these fires spreading so quickly and so unpredictably. I think when we think about the numbers, Yalda, you know, more than 1,000 structures burned down here in Pacific Palisades, it's easy to lose sight of just what that means for the individuals, the years, the decades of memories tied up in these places. One gentleman was telling me that it's not just the fact that his home is gone, it's the fact that it's the place where his daughter took her first steps, the place where he taught his daughter to ride her bike for the first time. So I think those human stories are really the most striking, the most heartbreaking at a time like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Martha, thank you so much for all of your reporting on the ground there. Well, Martha was talking about the personal stories, and as we're saying, for some of those reporting on the story, it really is highly personal. NBC News' Jacob Soboroff has been surveying the destruction of the place where he grew up in Pacific Palisades, including his childhood home. Just have a look.
I grew up in Pacific Palisades, born and raised here, and I've never seen anything like this. We've had a lot of fires and even evacuated sometimes, but nothing like this. The whole town is gone as we knew it. This is the Palisades Public Library. It's still on fire. I brought my kids here. This was like the pride of the community when this thing was built. The weight of it all, I think, is very, very intense to think about.
In my 26 years, this could be one of the top, most devastating fires I've seen.
What happens in a situation like this where the high school's destroyed? You got churches destroyed. You got the 2 supermarkets in the community destroyed. How do you come back from something like this?
They come back one day at a time.
To me, Sunset Boulevard is the heart of my community. There's not a single house left standing here. What do you do? What do they do? There's just never, ever, ever been anything like this.
I mean, I know my house is gone, but I kind of just need to see it firsthand to just let it set in. I just can't believe it.
I thought I was going to wake up this morning and it's going to be a bad dream.
This is the first time that I've seen the house that I grew up in, and I don't really know what to say. Mom, look at this.
Is that Frontera?
Yeah.
Your birth house?
Yep.
Oh, I'm so sad. Every one of you guys was born in that house.
I know, it makes me sad too. This was a really, really special place for the Soboroff family, and I'm very sorry to see it go. And I'm very sorry for all of the residents of Pacific Palisades and everyone across the greater LA area that's going through this right now. I look around the town, the neighborhood, the place that I grew up in. I talk to my friends who I spend so much time with on these streets, and it's hard to imagine what comes next and what happens next.
Sees Jacob Soboroff there from his family home. You're just looking at some live images there. A plume of black smoke really gives you a sense just how active these fires remain. And from these aerial shots, we can just see the scale of the devastation and the huge area, which really does look like it's been bombed. People are starting to go back to their homes, and they're finding entire neighborhoods completely destroyed, and these aerial shots really just give us a sense of the scale of this. And as our correspondents have been saying from the ground, the threat is not over, and California is not out of danger. But this has been going on now for a 3rd day in a row. This is The World with me, Yalda Hakim. We've got lots more coming up after the break, including the growing influence of Elon Musk and accusations of meddling in other countries' politics. Stay with us.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome back. Let's turn our attention now to politics in the United States, and we're waiting to see how big a role Elon Musk will play in shaping US policy as part of President-elect Donald Trump's new administration. Until he takes office, the tech billionaire seems intent on meddling with the domestic politics of countries here in Europe, including the UK and in Germany. Tonight, he hosted a live stream chat with the leader of the far-right Alternative for Germany party. Just take a listen.
My recommendation for the people in Germany is to do the same. If you are unhappy with the situation, you must vote for change, and that is why I'm really strongly recommending that people vote for AfD. That's my strong recommendation, and I think this is simply the sensible move. And I think Alice Beadle's a very, very reasonable person, and hopefully people can tell just from this conversation, like nothing outrageous is being proposed, just common sense. So, in fact, I, as I've said publicly, I think only AfD can save Germany.
That was Elon Musk proving to be as unpredictable as his new boss. Well, there are now just over 10 days until the inauguration of Donald Trump as the 47th president of the United States. In the past week, the president-elect has refused to rule out using the US military to retake control of the Panama Canal and to seize Greenland. We're also waiting to see what his approach will be to achieving peace in Ukraine and the Middle East. Well, I've been speaking to the Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas, about her hopes for a second Trump turn. Have a listen.
If he can make Putin stop bombing Ukraine, then he can finish this war in a very short time. I don't know anybody else who is more for peace than Ukrainians. They really want peace, but Russia is the one who is bombing Ukraine. So if Donald Trump is in the power of saying to Putin, stop this war, withdraw your troops, then this war will be over in 24 hours, yes.
Do you think that Ukraine will go to the negotiating table at in a weaker position and will have to compromise when it comes to its territory?
Well, of course, it's up to the Ukrainians to decide when they are ready to, be around the negotiation table and what they are ready to agree to around that table. It's up to us right now to make sure that they are strong on the battlefield. The stronger they are on the battlefield, the stronger they are behind the negotiation table.
We've also heard, which we heard in the first Trump presidency as well, Donald Trump say that he wants NATO, the NATO alliance countries within NATO to up their defence spending now to 5%. Your reaction to that?
Well, he has been right about defense spending. We should also spend more on defense to make NATO stronger, especially when Russia and Iran, North Korea are bonding up and really presenting threat to the world. So this is clear that we need to invest more on defense.
One of the things that Donald Trump has said as well is that he's keen to obtain Greenland. What will European nations do if Donald Trump is actually serious about that? And he hasn't, in that press conference, ruled out using military force.
Well, I just spoke to the Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, and she has been very clear about this, that, it's good that the president-elect is recognizing the importance of Greenland in terms of transatlantic relations and also in terms of Arctic. That is a very important region. So this is definitely a good thing. But Denmark and the United States have been good allies. They have had good cooperation. So this will definitely continue in the future.
Are you concerned that, perhaps Article 5 might need to be invoked when it comes to statements like this from the United States?
Well, let's not rush ahead of the situation, really. Right now, this is what is clear, that Denmark and United States have had so good relations. It's also clear that United States is a member of international organizations, really respecting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries. And I am sure that this will continue in the future.
We're seeing Elon Musk flex his muscles a lot, especially when it comes to perhaps, expressing his opinions on politics in Britain, politics in Germany. Just your reaction to that, because we are hearing European leaders react to the actions of Elon Musk.
Well, we have to separate two things. I mean, Elon Musk as a person has the right to personal opinion about, different governments, different people. That is very clear. But there's also the digital platform that has a huge power. And there, European Union has rules in place, which is the Digital Services Act. And there are the obligations for the big platforms that the algorithms have to follow. So
there is that question of his proximity to the President of the United States. And so are you not worried that perhaps those rules, if there is a form of punishment on a platform like X, could have detrimental relations and an impact on relationships with Donald Trump?
But that's why I'm happy that in Europe we have clear rules in place for the big platforms, for the big digital platforms, that we can, there are obligations for the digital platforms, how the algorithms and technology needs to work.
But I guess Elon Musk is not an algorithm, is he? He's a person interfering in the politics and elections of European countries now.
Well, that's why I say Elon Musk definitely is a very powerful person. That is clear. But even powerful persons have the right to their opinion, their own opinion on different governments, for example. The other thing, that's why I want to separate those two things. The other thing is the platform that he's owning. And there the rules also apply as Digital Services Act, for example.
Vice President, always good to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
That was the Vice President of the European Commission, Kaja Kallas. Well, they may have their differences, but all 5 living US presidents joined together today to honour their predecessor, Jimmy Carter, whose state funeral was held in Washington, D.C. Our US correspondent, James Matthews, was watching for us.
It was a state occasion to remember a president past. Washington's farewell to Jimmy Carter took him the road past the White House, the road he'd taken to the 39th presidency. A state funeral at the National Cathedral gathered the people who'd populated Jimmy Carter's life.
With faith in Jesus Christ, we receive the body of our brother James for burial.
The occasion brought together former presidents of the United States. A relatively rare assembly of the 5 men living who've occupied the White House. Politically awkward in the circumstances. There was a Trump handshake for his former Vice President, Mike Pence. He'd been accused of supporting a mob that wanted to hang him 4 years ago. Pence's wife remains seated without even a glance. Barack Obama engaged in discussion with Donald Trump. But from Kamala Harris, there wasn't even a look until the glance back that harked back to a rift that ran deep. From the President's Club that had lost one of its own, the eulogy was read by its serving member.
Jimmy Carter's friendship taught me, and through his life taught me, the strength of character is more than title or the power we hold. It's the strength to understand that everyone should be treated with dignity, respect, that everyone, and I mean everyone, deserves an even shot.
You may say I'm a dreamer.
There was music and there was humour. Jimmy Carter's grandson told of the grandfather, a nuclear engineer, who had trouble with a mobile phone.
He called me, and on my phone it said, "Papa, I'm mobile." So I answered it, of course. I said, "Hey, Papa." He said, "Who's this?" I said, "This is Jason." He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm not doing anything. You called me." He said, "I didn't call you. I'm taking a picture."
Following the service, Jimmy Carter's coffin was taken onto a flight home to Plains, Georgia, and a private family burial next to his wife, Rosalind. It is America's farewell to reflect the humble origins and high office of Jimmy Carter, its 39th president. James Matthews, Sky News, in Washington.
Well, you're looking at images coming in from Georgia now, and as James Matthews was saying there, Jimmy Carter's casket has travelled to Plains, Georgia. It landed earlier at Lawson Army Airfield in Fort Moore, Georgia. And then his casket was transferred to a hearse that is now carrying him via motorcade to his hometown of Plains in Georgia, where he will be buried. So you can see the crowds there of supporters waiting for the motorcade to go past. And we believe the casket has landed and will make its way in the hearse in the streets of Plains, Georgia. Now to a story of hope. This week, former GB para-athlete and Army officer Jonny Huntington became the first disabled person to ski solo and unsupported to the South Pole. In total, he covered 566 miles of ice in 46 days. He did so in extreme freezing weather, and he was dragging a 110-kilogram sled behind him all the way. It's just the end of an amazing story of recovery. At the age of 28, Huntington suffered a stroke, leaving him paralysed from the neck down on his left side. Well, years of rehab followed before he could walk again and was able to take on this epic adventure. I asked him how it felt to finish. Have a listen.
Physically, I'm feeling, I'm not going to say ready to do it again, but feeling, really, really good, no aches and pains. And, to be honest, still sort of riding the high of having finished. The biggest obstacle was the weather, but kind of the opposite of what I'd expected from Antarctica. It's been, as you can possibly see behind me, I've got clear skies, no clouds, beautiful sunshine. And I have pretty much had that for the last 45 days, which has been brilliant in terms of, I haven't been malleted by a storm at all. But what it has meant is the snow underfoot has been really, really soft. There's been no sort of nice slidey required, every day to get going has been the single biggest challenge I've faced here, I think.
Yeah, Jonny, just talk us through and just tell our audiences, what happened to you. I mean, it was a stroke at 28.
Yeah, so I was, I had just commissioned into the military, so I was a British Army officer, albeit a very junior one. And I woke up one morning, went to the gym, and I had a brain bleed. So I was, over the course of about 15 minutes, I was completely paralyzed from the neck down on my left-hand side. And fortunately for me, I was in the military. I was put into Headley Court, which, was the best rehab facility in the country, probably. And, given very, very intensive rehab for 2.5 years, learning to walk again, learning to use my left hand again, and, sort of everything in between. And, I was very lucky when I was injured that I got involved with 2 charities, which got me into cross-country skiing, and the other got me into sort of more expeditionary, like alpinism, mountaineering. And, both of these really showed to me after my injury that I was still capable of playing sport and doing stuff in the outdoors and actually performing at quite a high level physically. I've always been really interested in sort of, what I refer to as long distance picnics, sort of just very, very long, slow, grueling events. And, over time, kind of the combination of these things planted the seed for doing something, really quite testing like the South Pole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess it's the solo element of it. Was that daunting?
Actually, so funnily enough, on the solo side of things, there was really never any doubt in my mind that that was the important thing to do, because a big thing from my perspective was making it abundantly clear that despite my disability, I was doing this on my own. And I think that's really important, because don't get me wrong, there's absolutely nothing wrong with asking for help at all. But at the same time, I was really desperate to prove that one could do stuff for oneself, regardless of a position of disadvantage.
Finally, what are your plans for the future? Are you sort of planning on doing more of this sort of thing?
Yes, much to my mother's disappointment, I shall be doing further stupid things in the future. I'm looking at running 50 marathons across 50 states in the US in 50 days. But I think that the real crux of that project for me is that what I'm doing in the intervening period is going to be working very closely with clinicians and other experts who will volunteer their time, because I feel that I suffered significantly with some mental health problems when I got injured. And I feel that this is something which is sort of only becoming more prevalent. And, lots of people are currently advocating for better mental health, but very few people are actually doing anything practical about it. And I would like to, use the event. These big events do attract a bit of attention. They do provide a bit of a focal point, for people to get together around. And I would like to use the next project to really help other people, to be able to look after their own mental health in a manner which is not interventional, but a manner which is, the equivalent of going to the gym, but for your mental health.
That was Jonny Huntington and his amazing story. Well, President Biden has just been issuing remarks on the Los Angeles fires. Let's just have a listen.
I want to be clear. What I know from talking to the governor, that there are concerns out there that there's also been a water shortage. The fact is, the utilities understandably shut off power because they're worried the lines that they carry the energy were going to be blown down and spark additional fires. But the Cal Fire, when they did that, it cut off the ability to generate pumping the water. That's what caused the lack of water in these hydrants. And so Cal Fire is bringing in generators to get these pumps up and working again so that there's no longer a shortage of water coming out of these hydrants. I'm also surging all federal resources possible to Southern California, including 400 additional federal firefighters, over 30 firefighting helicopters and planes, federally supplied, firefighting planes and helicopters, and 8 Department of Defense C-130s that are equipped to suppress wildfires. Today, the Secretary of Defense also authorized 500 wildfire ground clearing personnel from the Defense Department. And I've directed the department to continue working with Governor Newsom to identify additional resources that can be provided for public safety and security. And we've secured additional firefighters and firefighting aircraft from our ally in Canada as well. I also want everyone in Southern California...
President Joe Biden there. Well, that's all for tonight's programme. There is more live coverage of the LA wildfires in News at 10 next. Our show is back on Monday. See you again then. Good night.